From the universe of Corfall, World in Chaos, a story unfolding across hundreds of years. This is Fiction on the Edge, the podcast. Hello, fiction fanatics. Welcome back to Fiction on the Edge, the podcast. This is episode 3, and I'm Barry Clark. I'm your host. Now, before we get started, I would like to give you guys a little update. If you recall, last episode, I promised that I would do the Halloween show, a special edition Halloween show live at the haunted house in Laurel. But it turns out that I need all types of permits and permission from the owner. I need permits from the town and the county. And I've put in requests for information about the exact permits that I need and request from the owner or his representative. And I have yet to get any replies. But I'm still optimistic. There's still time, but it's starting to look like we're not going to be able to do the live show. So, in case things continue on as they are now, I've going to have to go to the contingency plan, which is to go up there without my gear, because that's the reason why I need the permits, because I have to take my gear with me. So my contingency plan is to go without the gear, do some live taping, and then come back and edit it into a video and do the show that way. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm still optimistic. Okay, so getting on with the show, and I do apologize about that. So getting on with the show, we're going to go right into the Mask Mystery Challenge. Why the mask and glasses? You probably wonder if you're just tuning in. If you've been here from the start, you already know. But for those just tuning in, this isn't just a fashion statement. It's part of the Mask Mystery Challenge. You want to play? Rules are posted at fictionontheedge.com, which is our official website. Guess the real reason I'm in disguise, and you could win some awesome swag. Stuff like the mask that I'm wearing. That's the official Corfall mask. You can also win a Fiction on the Edge coffee mug like this. And you can win a signed copy of Corfall, the novel. Now, you have to play to win. Now, if you were here last week, or last episode rather, I did mention that there's a couple of guesses already in. There was only 2, so I didn't want to read them out. But it seems that we're stagnating here with the guesses. We still are at the number 2 mark. So instead of dragging it on to the next episode, I'll go ahead and read what the 2 guesses are. And once we get a little more, I won't be reading them all. I'll just pick a few out of the bunch. But since we only have 2 for now, I'll go ahead and read them both. The first one is from Kamasuko, and it was 4 weeks ago. And his guess is, Bro's not protecting himself. He just didn't feel like shaving before the show. I gotta tell you Kamasuko or Kamasuko, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. But son, that's not the right answer. Fortunately for you, there's plenty of time to guess again. And remember, only one guess per email on the website. You can guess. Drop your guess at the official website, fictionontheedge.com, or you can drop it in the comments here on YouTube. So, Kamesuko, wrong answer. Now we have another one from Yuri Lemenes. That was also 4 weeks ago around the same time. His guess is, I think Barry's mask is connected to the manuscript that vanished. Maybe he's hiding because someone doesn't want the truth to get out. Now that is a very good guess. And you obviously read the book. So I'm going to give everyone a small clue as to where the clues come from. The Mask Mystery Challenge is rooted in the world of Corfall. If you've read the novel, you'll recognize the clues. And like we have in Edge. If you haven't read it yet, now's the perfect time to dive in and join in the fun. Okay, let's move on. We're going to start diving into the world of fiction. Fiction is a huge landscape and it's full of strange worlds. Unforgettable characters and emotions that stick with us long after the story ends. And that's whether you're reading or watching a movie or just listening to someone's story. And depending on how you look at it, there are many ways to break it down. So over the next few episodes, we're diving into 8 major genres of fiction, exploring their roots, their voices, and what makes them resonate with readers, writers, and fans alike. So here's the lineup. 8 different fiction genres. Coming in at number 1 is my favorite, science fiction. From futuristic technology to alternative realities. And then we have fantasy fiction, where magic, myth, and epic journeys live. Horror fiction, designed to haunt, disturb, or just outright terrify. Mystery and crime fiction, the art of suspense and solving the unsolvable. We also have romance fiction. That's a good one. Stories driven by connection, love, and emotional risk. Excuse me. Okay, then we get to historical fiction, where real history meets imagined lives. Coming in at 7 is literary fiction. Character-driven, stylistically rich narratives. And then, last but not least, adventure and action fiction. Fast, thrilling, and constantly moving. Now today we kick off this series with a genre that dares to look forward. Sometimes with hope, sometimes with horror. So let's talk about science fiction. To understand where science fiction came from and where it might be going, let's start with 2 of its greatest architects, Isaac Asimov and Arthur C. Clarke. Science fiction explores futuristic technology, space travel, alien life, or alternative realities. Now, Asimov Clarke had a treaty in 1990, a little joking exchange. Asimov and Clarke had a friendly rivalry and mutual respect. So in 1990, they reportedly made a humorous agreement called the Asimov-Clarke Treaty of Park Avenue, where they each jokingly agreed. Okay, Asimov would always insist Clarke was the best science fiction writer in the world, except for Asimov, and Clarke would always insist Asimov was the best science fiction writer in the world, except for Clarke. This was a tongue-in-cheek way of praising each other while playfully asserting their own place in literary history. Now, their science fiction philosophies were: Isaac Asimov was known for hard science fiction, especially his works on robotics and the Foundation series. He loved rules and logic. His famous 3 laws of robots is an example. Now, on the other hand, Arthur C. Clarke leaned towards scientific wonder and exploration, and with a more mystical tone, like 2001: Space Odyssey and Childhood's End. Now, they both believed in science as a path to understanding the universe, but Clarke was more speculative and philosophical, while Asimov stayed grounded in systems and logic. So the visceral power of sci-fi, like Alien and beyond. If Asimov and Clarke spoke to our minds, Alien spoke to our guts. While classic sci-fi often explores the intellectual possibilities of the future, there's a darker, grittier side, one that deals not with what we can build, but what might destroy us. Now, Alien of 1979 is the perfect lens for that. Now, Alien, in my opinion, was the movie that catapulted fiction on the big screen. Alien presents a future where space travel is not sleek or glamorous. It's industrial, corporate, and mechanical. And the ship, Nostromo, feels more like a haunted oil rig than a spaceship. If you compare that with Star Trek, one of the first sci-fi space travel films, which we'll get in future episodes. We're going to get into the comparison between the first fictional space travel and what we have going on now. A lot of people weren't even around when these sci-fi things started, so I was lucky enough to see it from the beginning up until now. So as I was saying, when Alien came out, there was no bright white walls or utopias, just metal corridors, flickering lights, and the hum of machines. So this isn't the future of progress, it's the future of survival. You feel the claustrophobia, the grind, the exhaustion. You feel the world building around alone makes you feel like you're there and want to leave. The alien as a living nightmare. The xenomorph is pure bioharmony, not just an alien, but a perfect predator, born from human flesh, with no motive except survival and destruction. It can't be reasoned with, it doesn't want peace, it's fast, stealthy, and dripping with acid. Now, I'm sure that everyone here, if you're a fiction fanatic like I am, you've seen that movie and all of the sequels. That was a great movie. Okay, unlike Asimov's robots, this isn't an ethical dilemma, it's fight or die. The fear here is pride. It's about being hunted in the dark by something stronger, smarter, and utterly inhuman. Some of the themes that cut deep is the body horror. The alien implants itself inside a host, violating the body's autonomy. The paranoia and isolation. No one can hear you scream in space, and no one knows who's next. And the corporate indifference involved in the movie. The implications. The crew is expendable. The company just wants the creature, and that's it. So, Alien isn't just about monsters, it's about systems that treat people like parts, and how the worst threats aren't always in space, but from within. But in 1979, Alien was the beginning of a new era of sci-fi horror. Alien 1979 was absolutely a watershed moment in sci-fi horror. It blended two genres, science fiction and horror, more seamlessly and viscerally than many films before it. Its atmosphere, production design, and haunted house in space type structure were groundbreaking. So it paved the way for future sci-fi horror films like The Thing in 1982, Event Horizon in 1997, and even games like Dead Space. What's worth nuancing? Sci-fi horror existed before Alien. The Thing from Another World was 1951, Invasion of the Body Snatchers 1956, and Planet of the Vampire in 1965. And these are all films that I grew up watching. So my impression of science fiction began at a very early age, and it just developed as I grew older. So Alien redefined the genre with gritty realism and industrial space design, in contrast to the shiny 1960s space aesthetics. Strong female lead, Ripley was iconic. Visceral body horror. The chest burster scene became a cultural landmark, and it also had psychological terror rooted in isolation and mistrust. Now, before Alien, because when I went to watch that movie, it was the very first movie of its kind, and like I said earlier, it paved the way for what we watch in sci-fi space horror now. But as I was growing up, we were watching movies, and a lot of them were from my parents' teenage years, like The Day the Earth Stood Still, or Forbidden Planet, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, 1956. The Day of the Earth Stood Still was 1951. So you also have The Incredible Shrinking Man. I remember that clearly. That was 1957. I wasn't watching it back then because I wasn't alive back then, but I remember watching it, and it was released in 1957. And The Fly. The Fly was a very intriguing movie. It was released in 1958, but for its time, that was a groundbreaking film. Journey to the Center of the Earth, 1959, and 1959 was a good year. The Time Machine, Village of the Damned, 1960. Planet of the Apes, 1968. I can recall vividly going to the theater watching that, and all the sequels as well. And then, as I spoke about earlier 2001, A Space Odyssey in 1968. And those are fiction without the horror. Now you had, I'm going to name about 10 of the horror movies that paved the way that we were watching back in the early days. House of Wax was 1953. Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1964. The Night of the Hunter, 1955. Horror of Dracula, 1958. The Tingler, 1959. Psycho, 1960. Now that was a good movie. The Innocents, 1961. Carnival of Souls, 62. The Haunting, 63. And Rosemary's Baby in 1968. These were all great movies back in their time. And if you ever get a chance to watch them, remember those movies. Watch them. They're great. If you love science fiction, you'll love those movies. Now, the rise of the sci-fi survivor. There's Ripley, a character who flips the sci-fi genre on its head. Not a soldier or a scientist, just a worker who refuses to die. Smart, resourceful, skeptical of authority, she becomes the emotional anchor and the one who finally says no to fear. In Ripley, we find a hero not defined by brute strength, but by resilience. She doesn't save the world, she survives it. And sometimes that's enough. So, to wrap up the Facero section, Facero Sci-Fi doesn't just ask big questions. It shoves us into the airlock, slams the door, and turns off the lights. It reminds us that for all our tech and dreams, we're still small creatures afraid of the dark. So, let's get back to the masked mystery before we wrap this thing up. The masked mystery challenge for this episode is: a friend once sent me a photo of myself taken from a rooftop across the street from my apartment. No note, no explanation. I still don't know who took it or how they found it. But I do know this mask makes me harder to spot. Now, the Mask Mystery Challenge is rooted in the world of Corfu. If you've read the novel, you'll recognize the clues and likely have an edge. Haven't read it yet? Now's the perfect time to dive in and join the fun. So, this new challenge, like all the others, will be posted on the official website, fictionontheedge.com. Now, if you like science fiction and you like Fiction on the Edge, the podcast, please don't forget to like and subscribe below. And be sure to catch my short story series on Edge Tales twice a month. The podcast is once a month. The short stories are twice a month. So this wraps up another episode of Fiction on the Edge, the podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe and catch us for episode 4 in 30 days. So we'll see you then. But until then, stay tuned, stay curious, and stay on the edge.